I'm Jane Clark, President of the Michigan West Coast Chamber of Commerce, and happy to welcome you to our Public Policy Committee meeting today. It's actually Friday the 13th, so Friday, November 13th, and so glad you're with us. We've got a really robust agenda ahead of us, and so now I'm going to turn it over to our committee chair, Dave Nitre of the ODC Network, to lead today's meeting. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. It's good to see you all. We just appreciate the chance to connect again. We couldn't have this fun experience of getting together without the support of our mission advocacy supporters. And I do want to introduce Joe Hune from Blue Cross Blue Shield, just to take a moment to share why he values this programming and what Blue Cross is doing for us out in the community.
Good morning, and thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. Certainly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our leader down in the Holland office, Sandy Ham, who's been such a phenomenal leader. And I think I just saw Sandy give a wave. So Sandy's been wonderful, a good asset to our team. And I would tell you to stop in and see her, but you're not allowed because the offices are closed because of COVID-19. And since I wanted to give a few comments regarding COVID-19, since March, our company, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, has waived co-pays and deductibles for COVID testing and treatment. In fact, we've covered 640,000 COVID-19 tests. We've waived co-pays for telehealth visits, which is dependent on, obviously, the internet, which is our big topic today for our discussion. We've waived co-pays and deductibles for expanded telehealth services as well for behavioral health. And when we talk about telehealth visits, obviously that's visiting your physician or another provider online. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan's paid for over 3.1 million telehealth visits and 120,000 telehealth behavioral health visits for mental health treatment. And of course, we couldn't do what we do without our partners throughout the state of Michigan, whether it's the healthcare industry. We, in fact, contributed and provided advance payments to hospitals and healthcare systems throughout the state at just shy of $700 million this spring to our partners in the healthcare industry. And we also provided 70,000 units of PPE in a time, sometime this spring, when PPE was so difficult to find and locate. And of course, we couldn't do this without our customers, our agents, and of course, to our friends in the Chamber of Commerce. So thank you so much. Again, when we're looking at the COVID numbers today as they continue to skyrocket, we certainly just simply ask for your diligence. And with that, I want to say thank you again, and I'll turn the microphone back over.
Appreciate it, Joe. Appreciate the reminder as well. We appreciate what you folks have done for our community during this time. So, like you mentioned, we're here today to talk about access and internet, and we are in for a treat here. We have our guest presenter this week is Pete Hoffswell, the Superintendent of Broadband Services for the Holland Board of Public Works. Pete's got a slide deck that he's going to share with us, fill us in kind of on what's coming down the pipe and what planning is underway and how that's going to be able to support the business community. We do have kind of our regular group here today, and so please hold your questions at least during that presentation, because I think we're going to have a longer Q&A. And if you're willing, I'd love for folks to just pop on with your camera, unmute yourself, and just one at a time try to ask Pete some questions when we get to that point. We'll try to do this a little bit more like what we would have if we were all meeting in person. And if for some reason the wheels fall off the bus and we all start talking at the same time, we can go back to our chat feature approach to that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pete, and then Colleen is going to share the screen. And so we're going to go away from Hollywood Squares here for a moment or two.
Thanks a lot, Dave, and good morning to everybody here. This is a quick slide deck here that I just want to give you sort of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going with broadband services on our fiber optic infrastructure in the city of Holland. And let me start just with some of the basics. As you walk around town, you might have not noticed this stuff in the air and under your feet. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see some power lines, but the lowest cables that you see on power lines are communications cables. See, there's a couple things here on these power lines. You see those things that look like snowshoes there? We call those snowshoes. Those are fiber optic storage loops. So anytime you see one of those, there's some fiber optics there. In the middle, there's that black can looking thing. That's a splice case. That's where we connect fiber optic strands in an individual cable together to route throughout our community. You can see in the lower left-hand corner that a single fiber optic cable has a whole bunch of little fiber optic strands. We have cables that have 24 and 48 and 144 and 288 individual strands in the cable. We have cables with over 800 strands in downtown Holland as part of our shared gigabit service that I'll be talking about. We're not just over the air. If you ever walk around downtown, you'll notice these plates in the ground. You can see one here in this picture on the right. That's called a handhole or a vault. And that is where we store extra fiber that's connected up and splice cases underground. So every time you see one of those, it could have fiber. It also could have electricity in it. So don't go opening those up and checking them out yourself. We've had fiber optic infrastructure in our community for over 25 years that we started really initially to provide enhanced communications for control and monitoring of our public utility infrastructure of water and electricity and wastewater. But we created that in an open access model, saying any additional capacity we had in the fiber optic network, let's go ahead and make it available to the community as a resource that they could use for communications. And that's when Broadband Services was born in 1992. Since then, we've expanded it to over 260 miles of fiber. We've partnered with other public fiber optic networks like our education system to allow us to extend our reach even further than the city of Holland, but into the neighboring townships and beyond. You see, we have fiber like all the way to Saugatuck, for example. We provide dark fiber service. That's like a pipe that you can connect your stuff up to. We have lit services where we provide the network connections, the network electronics, and we do this in an open access way that allows us to provide that infrastructure, but other companies to provide the services on it, like internet service. That's our 6 partner ISPs that do that and have for many years. To date, we have over 580 active services throughout our community. And in 2017, the city, through its strategic planning process, was really interested in expanding broadband service further. And that's what you see in this picture down here was the BPW's work on extending broadband further into our community by building a bunch of fiber downtown. We have our shared gigabit internet service that we established and went online in 2018. It started as a pilot project to look at ways to build fiber infrastructure and service that would be available to more of the community, particularly small businesses and residents. So historically, the BPW's fiber infrastructure really was helping medium and large size businesses, and we wanted to be able to provide this community-owned infrastructure to all of the community. And we built our downtown shared gigabit service to do that. The green shaded area shows where we have this infrastructure. We have a gig service all the way up to the chamber, and I think Jane is probably utilizing it right now to participate in this conference. People really like it. We have new people coming on all the time, and it's been successful enough that we're looking to expand right now. Not looking, but we are expanding north on Central Avenue. It's been an interesting part of the downtown area, the development that we've seen over the past few years and what's happening right now. There's some multi-tenant units there along 6th Street That's a downtown place, and the terraces. Many people live in there, and very excited to get fiber. So we're building up into that area right now. Let me just pause a second. Fiber is what we like to call a future-proof technology. When we first built the fiber, we were running network connections at about 10 megabits per second. Today, we provide service at a gigabit per second, which is loads faster than what we started with, and it is faster than what your typical internet connection is from other providers. This chart in the lower right-hand corner shows the capabilities of fiber today, and we can run over 100 terabits on a single strand of fiber, which is an amazing capacity for the future. So you imagine in 1992, we were at 10 meg. 10 meg has fallen off the bottom of this chart as being so slow. Cable TV, coaxial cable internet service has a theoretical limit of 50 gig. They're running about a gig right now. You can get a gig from the cable company. They brought that to Holland to match our service. So that's sort of where we are. Where we're going is we've established a broadband task force to explore the opportunity that broadband is to our community, to understand the value, and to start to develop consensus as a community using a community-based decision-making process. Now, if you've been around for Holland for a while, you know that this community-based decision-making process methodology has been used before. You've seen it in the P21 decision, which was us working as a community to decide how to move forward with energy production in our community. We as a community work together to explore the value of that, and then to come up with a plan to ultimately create the Holland Energy Park. And because we did it as a community, you see some community touches to that. We call it the Holland Energy Park, not the Holland Power Plant, because it's much more than an energy park, because that's was important to the community. Waterfront Holland is an active visioning process to envision what our downtown waterfront will be. That's community-based decision-making model as well. The task force is established by the city through Keith Van Beek, and the BPW through Dave Koster, our general manager, to explore these opportunities that broadband brings to us. We've gotten through the first phase on this timeline of forming the task force. We are in the second phase right now, which is the first part was a listening tour where we reached out to community leaders, thought leaders, and constituent group leaders in our community to get their input on the value of broadband. And that has finished, and we're moving further into engagement, which is why I'm here talking to you guys today, is to continue along on this path. The information that we will get from that, we will bring together to start to develop a concept on how to move forward. And that's where we are moving into. I hope that we will get the task force will complete their work sometime this winter and come out with a recommendation on how we as a community can move forward with further development. Since this is a public policy meeting, I thought I maybe would want to mention the public policy that's been happening. As you guys know, the pandemic has really brought to the forefront the value of broadband for our community locally and in our country. Good broadband has allowed people to work from home, have allowed people to conduct business, even do their shopping, all online, and has helped buffer the negative impact of the pandemic to business and life as a whole. It has spurred broadband expansion at a federal level and a state level. Michigan House Bill 4288 has been signed into law. That is a Broadband Expansion Act, went active in 2020. That identifies $14.3 million out of the state budget for grants for broadband development for unserved areas. So this is an interesting unserved area. If you have a cabin up north, you might understand what unserved area is. Can hard to get your cell phone to work up there, much less internet connection. The broadband maps, unfortunately, suggest that there are no real unserved areas in the state of Michigan, because you could get a satellite link up there, or a regional provider says that they could potentially build there. So we have a problem with the understanding of what is unserved and what is underserved, and we're working on that at a regional and state level through organizations like Muni Networks, which focuses on municipalities being able to provide community-owned broadband services. Next Century Cities that looks at what communities can do to be competitive in the world that we live in through modern infrastructure and local decision making. And more regionally, Merit, through their Moonshot project, has helped sort of bolster a platform or a framework on which communities can access to develop fiber where they need it. There's my contact information, and I hope I spoke quick enough to get through this, Dave. I'd want to make sure to open this up for a discussion. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. We will turn this over to questions. Looking at that map early on, it shows, the extensive spread you folks have in the county. And I was just wondering if you could touch on how you partner with other jurisdictions. I saw Zeeland, I saw Hudsonville, other school districts that you're working with. What do those relationships look like, and how do you plan with them for the future?
So from a technical standpoint, a lot of our fiber is what we call the sheath. So do you remember the picture? It shows we have a black fiber optic cable, but within that are many strands of fiber. So what we would do is we would build that single fiber optic cable and then split the ownership of the strands within. So part of that might be owned, for example, by Ottawa ISD, part might be owned by the county, and part would be owned by the Holland Board of Public Works. So that's a shared infrastructure. And so that's how a lot of those what we call backhaul or, connectivities, long haul connectivity cables came around. And it's been a great value. It gives us access to a lot of neighboring communities to provide services. And more interesting story, Dave, is we as a county have got together looking at these publicly owned fiber infrastructures and interconnected them through a network we call FOGNet. A FOG is Fiber Optimized Government. So a partnership of Ottawa ISD, the Holland Board of Public Works, the county, Grand Haven Public Schools have interconnected their fiber optic networks that in effect gives us a network that spans the entire county. This is a great benefit for community organizations that might not be able to get connectivity very affordably otherwise. So an example is Park Township. Park Township needs to get services from the county. They need to connect to the data center at the county for data applications that the county provides. And through FOGNet, they can connect there at no cost to transport across the FOGNet network. It really has, it keeps these fiber owners talking to each other. We manage a network through FOGNOG, the Fiber Optimized Government Network Operators Group, which I started 3 years ago to keep the whole thing up and running. As we build fiber, we collaborate on that. Oh, you're building fiber there? We'd love to have fiber there. So it's really great. The county itself has a broadband development strategy. If you go to the county's website, you can learn about that. And they're looking at getting connectivity further into our county as a whole, pushed by them. Whew, long answer.
Thank you. No, that helps a ton. And now I'm pretty sure you have the coolest acronym ever, FOGNOG. So I'm going to run that here at the ODC at some point. So
yeah.
Just looking kind of at our Hollywood Squares here, do other folks have questions they'd like to ask? Jody's waving her hand frantically. Go, Jody, go.
I've been trying not to pounce, Pete, but I'm back here just like, rubbing my hands together because I live in that land, that fictional place of no internet. I would challenge the idea that unserved means not even satellite is available, because satellite really isn't a viable option for any kind of reliable internet. And that's what my option is at this point. Don't live in the middle of nowhere, live on the same street as LG Chem, so I know things are nearby. How do you determine where you're going to bring services to next? And do you have a long-term plan that gives me any kind of hope that I might indeed find a snowshoe in my vicinity anytime soon?
Yeah, so us as a industry of broadband, as an industry as a whole, is we are very challenged by understanding where broadband is available and where it isn't. And when it's available, is it actually good or not? The FCC uses a mapping system that is based on census blocks. So if one person in a census block has awesome internet, the FCC says, well, everybody there's can get it. Well, that's not necessarily true. And so you're right. The map, if you look up any broadband coverage map, Jody, it probably says you're good. Well, and we know that's not correct. So one of the challenges is getting realistic mapping. And the county, Ottawa County, is working on an endeavor to actually get practical maps for the county, and they're trying to discover ways. Now, to answer your question more directly, how do we decide where we're going to build? That is part of the Broadband Taskforce, is looking at how we're going to be able to build, where we should build. We, as a community-owned infrastructure, don't really want to cherry pick. That's not fair to the community if we're only serving to some people and not others. So it's a real challenge, because we'd like to build it everywhere. Like we have our electrical service to every single building in our coverage, in our service area is connected to us. And that's an expensive proposition. We build where we can we can invest and see a cost recovery. So we run a sustainable business model in that regard. And so you'll see development like on North Central, where we know we have customers we can connect up to right away. Getting into the more rural areas like where you live is it's more expensive and less revenue. So it's a real challenge.
Yeah. So if I push back a little bit on that, sorry, Dan, and think, the people on Central already have access to other internet. It might not be fiber, but they have other broadband available to them. As I watch what happens with the pandemic, it would seem that the have and the have-not line is just going to grow even wider. And I have concern for those students that are home now that have no way to actually access the virtual learning because they don't have internet available to them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it is a huge challenge, is this idea of digital equity. And we talk about that a lot in the task force, and it became a bullet point within our research in the listening tour. We reached out to a lot of community members, and it's not just Jody, it's not just rural folks that live on the edge where there is no real good internet. It's folks right within our own community that can't afford the services that are available to them, and they struggle because they can't pay their power bill, much less a broadband bill, and that is a challenge. We hope that the task force will find a way to respond to these needs.
Dan, you're up.
Just from an understanding, Pete, and kind of connecting the dots between all the comments, one of your first couple slides showed kind of the yellow lines on where fiber was already in place, kind of going down to Saugatuck up towards, Holland Township a little bit. So what's the connection between, fiber being available for businesses versus residential? And then would it still be I get service through Charter and they're using your lines, or would I actually be a BPW internet customer? Like, how does that all link together?
Yeah, those are great, like 5 questions there you just asked. So the fiber infrastructure that you see in that map, that looks like it's everywhere, doesn't it? It really looks like it. Those are sort of like water mains, and they're high capacity distribution fiber optic network. So the next step from the technical side is you have to have that service line, just like you got to have a service line hooked up to a water main or a sewer line. You have to have that service line run in to any individual business or home. That's an expensive proposition in those service lines. And when you look at the footprint of our backhaul, what we have found historically is that larger businesses can afford to invest in that service line. It's a pretty expensive installation. Residents usually can't. And so that's sort of where we are with that. In Holland, as you guys all know, development of medium and large business is all on the periphery of Holland, as we have industry, warehousing, manufacturing happening. They gobble up that undeveloped land where there's historically not good broadband, and we have fiber there. So that's how we ended up historically getting larger businesses. We do that in an open access model. So anybody can drive on the streets in Holland, right? The streets are an open access model. It's great because you can choose how packages get delivered to your house. FedEx can deliver them, UPS can deliver them, or the US Mail can deliver them. It doesn't matter. They all get to use the streets in equal access. Our open access fiber optic network is the same way. Our 6 partner ISPs could provide internet service to your business and other services that ride on the network to your business. We are the street and they are the delivery mechanism. So that's the open access model. And we hope to utilize that. We believe in the open access model as a good way for infrastructure to run. That's how we run our electric and water too. We don't tell you how to use your water or electric. We just get it to you. We don't sell you refrigerators that plug into electricity. You have many choices on refrigerators. That's the open access model. Downtown, we had a pilot project to expand our shared gigabit service. And we had requests for RFI, requests for information go out to many partners, including large telecommunications companies, saying, hey, we want to build this infrastructure, but we don't really want to provide the service. We like you to do that. And they all said, nah. So we were sort of forced to become an ISP. So if you sign up for shared gigabit service in downtown Holland, BPW is your ISP. It's nice. BPW is a local company. You're talking to the guy right now that leads it. Good luck talking to the guy that leads the big carriers. And our customers are pretty happy with that. And our mission is a community-based mission, not a profit-based mission. So our service tends to align more with what the community needs. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah,
Dan?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Good. The open access model is a complex one. We were one of the first in the country to utilize it. It's something that really took off over in Europe, and many of the fiber infrastructures in Europe are open access model. It's great because it it's an open market, so you have companies can come in and provide services, and they can compete. We've seen open access networks where a gigabit service for the service itself has dropped down to like $10 a month. And you add in the infrastructure costs on that, you're looking at a gigabit service that costs maybe $35 a month. In Holland right now, it's $85 a month. But that's what competition can do, is it really gets people to sharpen their pencils. And so we're a big advocate for that. The carriers that exist out there are infrastructure based. So they like to own the copper and own the service, and therefore own the customer. It's not an open competitive environment, really. It's more of an oligopoly, very few providers and high prices because of that. It's interesting, Dan, all the carriers do use our network because there's certain spots where we have fiber that it just makes financial sense for them to do it. And they use our fiber as backhaul. So we have cell phone carriers that use our fiber to connect up to their cell phone towers because we happen to have fiber running, you know, out to Saugatuck, for example, when nobody else did. Things like that. So, oof. It's a lot to take in, huh?
Got a question that came through on the chat to me here. Let me try to read this through for you, Pete. Are there federal dollars available to meet some of the need through the FCC E-rate program, given we're still under a pandemic state, in terms of finding funding for those families that can't afford things? That question's from Greg Hoffman.
So yes, the FCC works on developing ways to get more of our country access to the broadband that they need. They do that through, they manage, for example, radio wave frequencies, the licensing for frequencies, and the FCC opens those up to allow wireless carriers more bandwidth that they in turn can then provide to their customers to give more bandwidth that way. There's funding for rural broadband development that communities can access to help build fiber where there is none. So that right now the federal funding is mostly for that. It's for unserved areas, like we were talking before. Holland is not an unserved area by any means. And as far as the FCC maps, as Jody and I were talking about, all of Ottawa and Allegan County are not unserved. So that money is hard for us as in our area to access. The other side of that is the social component. I need internet, but I can't afford it. And there are federal programs. It used to be called Lifeline, where you could get a low-cost cell phone, so you could have voice communications that was subsidized by the federal government. That program has been expanded where folks can access that for broadband access. And the big carriers have programs that are subsidized by the federal government to do that. So yes, there is. And as I mentioned, the state is working on it. You know, $14.5 million is a drop in the bucket. Our study to build fiber to our entire community in a ubiquitous, universal fashion was, you know, over $60 million. So 14 million is not going to go very far at all, especially in rural Michigan, where you have a long way to go with fiber. It's expensive to build.
Good answers, Pete. Thank you for the breadth of your knowledge. Just looking around to see if we have other questions here. Yes, I see one there. Jody.
So for, if I'm hearing this correctly, residents in those outlying areas to get access to the fiber, we really need our carriers to join onto that, join onto the streets. You know, they need to say, yep, we're gonna use the street infrastructure that you've put in, and Charters and the Comcast of the world will have to say, yep, we'll we'll do that. We'll provide this as an option to our customers. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's my opinion. Open access networks are the way to go. Can you imagine if our city had 3 road systems and you could only use one of them because one of them was available to you? The other one was a private road system that was for FedEx only, right? Open access is like one road system. And we tried to do this actually in 1992 when we first were going to build fiber. It was a contentious time with communications. Our cable franchise was up, and we said, well, if we build this fiber, can we just write a city ordinance that says, okay, anybody that wants to do communications down this street where there's open access fiber has to use that fiber? Well, in 1992, that was like unheard of. It was a visionary idea. But as you can imagine, trying to cobble the ability for the telecommunications carriers to do the work that they've always done in the way they do it was not well received. And so ultimately, we decided to build an open access network, but it doesn't have the teeth that forces people to do it. So when we were building downtown, 4 other fiber providers were building downtown at the same time. So downtown, we have 4 or 5 or 6 different overlapping fiber infrastructures. Isn't that crazy? Why do that? It's expensive to put in the ground. So yeah, Jody, I think open access, what would be awesome is the carriers say, oh, you have such a great network. We're just going to hop on your network and provide services to our customers using your infrastructure. The big carriers are not there yet. I think it's a matter of economics. They just can't afford to build this fiber that is expensive. And I can go deeper into this with 5G and everything. But yes, so to answer your question quickly, yes, that's what we need. Whether we'll get it or not, I don't know.
Pete, again, just thank you for your willingness to be candid with us and explain these things. To kind of wrap up, one last question here would be, what could people do to keep the progress going after this meeting, if that's something you're passionate about? Clearly, Jody is going to be calling you 10 to 20 times here about lived on. But what can the rest of us do if this is something we want to advocate for?
So we are in this listening tours, just finishing up, and we'll continue through this public engagement through learning sessions and listening sessions with the community. So if there's any one story from my presentation and our conversation today that sticks, go ahead and tell it to other people, please, and send them my way if they have questions. We want to engage with as many people as possible so we can understand what is a pretty complex opportunity of broadband development and come together as a community to decide what we want to do moving forward. And that's going to take a lot of conversations, and I hope we can talk more about this when you guys want to. I'm available anytime, and call me with any more other questions you have. I'm always available.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One award we'd like to give out today. You've been anonymously nominated, Dan, for the best background at the meeting today. So well done. It comes with no special perks other than just a warm, fuzzy feeling. So congratulations.
I'll take what I can get right now. So warm, fuzzy feelings, much appreciated. Throw on a sweatshirt if I actually have to go outside, because it sure does not look like that out my actual window.
With that, I'll hand things over to Jane here to wrap us up for this meeting.
Good. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Pete, so much for joining us today. Great information that we're happy to spread the word to our members. So thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next time.